So Scott, when we work with a client, one of the things we always focus on is really market research. And you and I both are normally pretty shocked that I would probably say 80% of the clients we work with never really did any market research. They just like, hey, I've got this idea, I've got this product or this service. I'm just going to throw it out there without really looking into, is this going to be a profitable business and a vehicle that's going to get me where I want to go? What are some of the reasons like you feel, why this is so important of how we're able to get a client success so quick?
I think it's a really fascinating area. I love to think about this. A lot of people, I think, go in reverse. They start the business and then they think about doing some research. But it's really the exact opposite. So we like to spend a fair amount of time up front doing some market research. And what we talk about when we talk about market research, what we're really talking about is resolving a few key threshold questions before you dive into the business. For example, is there a market? Is it a real problem that for somebody it's serious enough that they would hire someone? That could be, that could be a range of things, and I'm intentionally being vague because what is silly to one person could be a serious problem to another person.
Right, because the reason why people buy something is either a massive pain or a major desire. They have a desperate need. It's not really a want; it's a desire for what you're selling. Now, you and I both know, especially me being in a fitness background, people desperately need it, but they technically don't always want it. Right? Like I'll have a client that'll tell me, "I'm not going to spend $1,000 to work with you for the next 2 months." But because I don't have the money, but then later that weekend, they go spend $3,000 on a Coach purse, right? Like there's market research that's done there. You, in your past profession as a tax lawyer, people desperately needed you when they hired you, right? So looking at when doing market research, it's very important. And I want to emphasize, if you have a business right now, and you didn't do market research, it's not that you're going to go off the cliff. That's why a lot of people actually reach out to Scott and I is to start going through this process. So when we do that market research, Scott, like what are some of the points besides just the massive pain or desire when we're looking at, hey, how are we going to make this successful?
Ideally, you want to be able to provide, it's not so much the transformation that your client is interested in, but they are interested in a particular outcome. For example, if you're a chiropractor, you might be seeing somebody who's got back pain. So what is it they're really looking for? Well, they want to be they want to be pain free, and maybe they want to be pain free because they are a professional dancer. They can't dance anymore, or they're an avid golfer. They can't play golf anymore. So,
or if a grandparent want to pick up their grandkids.
Exactly. And so that is a very, very, the feeling of need to resolve that problem is going to be very, very strong.
Right. And it's one of the things that we get to through the process, also into the guide section here, of how to position yourself correctly. Right. And that's why market research is so important, because again, are you filling a need? Are you filling a desire? Are you solving a problem? And looking at, do they have the ability to actually pay for what you're selling as well? That's another key component. So, have them having the purchasing power. Talk about that a little bit when going through options for market research.
It's absolutely critical that you identify who your ideal client is going to be. And the reason for that is exactly as you said. You might be targeting exactly. Let's take a business that we've already been working with. Let's say we have a general contractor. He builds custom homes. He builds custom homes in an affluent town in Colorado. And the average price there is over $1 million. So his homes are between $1 and $2 billion. There's a very specific group of people that are in that market. And if you don't know your market, if you don't really understand who your ideal client is, then you're probably going to end up speaking to a lot of people other than the ones you intended to.
Yeah, and one of the analogies you and I both use a lot is car companies use market research, right? Like that's how they craft their message, they design their cars, what things they really speak about, what accessories are in there. Because if you're selling a $20,000 Honda or a $500,000 Lamborghini, market research was done to target those specific individuals and get sales to those specific individuals.
That's a great example.
You don't see them crossing, Lamborghini trying to sell to a Honda buyer.
Exactly. A Honda buyer is not going to have the resources to buy a Lamborghini. Now, listen, maybe is there one out there? Of course, probably, but Lamborghini would spend a lot of money, waste a lot of money, building and designing a product for people that are really only interested in a Honda. And
Correct.
Car companies, I really like the example of car companies because they're good about doing this research before they even design it. They design the cars around the research.
100%.
How much are they going to pay them? Lamborghini is a great example because they recently came out with an SUV. I mean,
Yep.
their Lamborghini determined that there was a need. There was a problem. Now, to a lot of us, it may seem like the most frivolous problem in the entire world. And the truth is, it probably is. But Lamborghini is a real company and they've got a product to sell. And so this is something that they have to deal with.
Yeah.
And the problem is they had two things. They had trouble growing their company with just the sports cars that they had. And they were missing out on a huge opportunity that a lot of other really high-end companies, Rolls-Royce has an SUV, Bentley has an SUV, Ferrari has an SUV. So of course, Lamborghini couldn't miss out. But the other problem they had was there was an unmet need. They had customers who had money, who wanted to buy a really exotic, fancy car, but there wasn't a car available for them from that company for them to consider.
Yep. Now, also looking at the market research, and if we're looking at those two examples again, you're going to have, depending on what product you're selling, that's why you do the market research, because and we'll talk about this in later sections, but how to set up your correct pricing, because we have a client that he does extremely customized sunglasses, and he sells them from $3,000 up to $8,000.
Not just sunglasses, regular prescription glasses also.
Yeah, and so being a doctor, he has these very specific things, and and having them from $3,000 to $8,000, a lot of people are going to be like, "Who's going to spend $8,000 on a pair of prescription sunglasses?" Well, when he customizes them, and he can get very specific materials, as we've talked about, like woolly mammoth bone, space shuttle. He has some people that were Rolling Stones fanatic, so he had material from actually, a famous guitar.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
so
and also a drumstick. He could make them out of drumsticks.
Yeah. And so it's a very powerful thing, but it's not something he's going to mass produce. So that's like a Lamborghini. Now we have other clients like, talking about construction or flipping houses. This is something more like the $30K Honda, right? You're going to be having a higher volume coming in because of who you're targeting. Either way, you want to make sure your clients are easy to target. And that's why market research is so important also, is how easy to target the person going to be able to target to sell your thing to. And so we can talk about what avenues to do, which obviously we talk more in there as well. But when you're looking at trying to target, the market research, go in a little bit more detail of what you've experienced with your own business, with others, and why it's so important there as well.
Yeah, we never want to assume that all we need to do is open up our company or our store or our restaurant or something. And because there are other ones like it out there, there will be people beating a path to our door to do business with us. That is not a safe assumption. And that usually proves to be a miscalculation.
Yeah. One of the things that we always do with the client too is like looking at the market isn't just how to position that client, how to set up the pricing, how to target those people, but is it the people that you're targeting, the industry you're in? Is it something that's growing so it's able to move things faster, put you in a better place to win, rather than something that's dying off? As an example of tractor trailers, right? You go back 150 years ago, tractors, horses, carriages, farming material was something that everybody needed. All of a sudden, now that's not a necessity for most people, right? And there's countless things. You and I aren't going to go start a company to sell Walkman CD players, right? Like there's no necessity for a Walkman CD player anymore, except for someone just wants a vintage one, right? So looking at markets when we do the market research, seeing that growth, and obviously you've worked with a couple clients where that was a key aspect they were missing. So give some details kind of on that as well.
I had a great conversation with there's a gentleman in our town here in Dallas. He's got a store. It's right next to a restaurant that I eat at sometimes. And the gentleman's business is he does appliance repair, like your old television set or your old VCR. I talk to him sometimes because he eats in that restaurant. I've been in a store. I ask him, who repairs a TV anymore? And he said that he's got a lot of clients that have been clients for 40, 50 years, and they won't have any place else to go. And I asked him, is there any business in it? He said, no, he told me he hasn't made any money in probably a couple of decades, but he's still there. And so I asked him, what you just enjoy? He says, yeah, he loves his customers. He's very happy with what he does. He doesn't get that many customers. That's the kind of business that you're going to have if you don't do market research and you're not selling into a growing market. Fortunately, the gentleman is extremely happy. He loves doing what he's doing, which is not much.
Yeah, but most people get into business not for that. And, most of our clients, obviously, it is for growing and scaling that business.
To make money.
To make money.
You want to grow your business.
Yeah, correct. And that's the important to do in market research, not just when you first start a business, but also periodically through your business's life's journey, right? Because there's pivots that are done. If we use as an example of Apple, right? They came out with the iPad, right? Game changer. They pivoted to the iPhone, game changer. Those all changed industry.
So we've talked about a pivot
like that.
We talked about Lamborghini and Apple, which is great. But these principles really apply to it doesn't really matter if you're selling, if it's a lemonade stand in the neighborhood run by children. You've still got to determine if you're in a neighborhood that's in a high traffic area where people can't stop, or they're not walking by, you might not be able to sell any lemonade. Yep. Even if it's the best lemonade in the world, you have to do a little bit of market research to understand whether or not there's a need and a market for what you're selling.
And as a perfect example, I had a fitness brick and mortar business, right? And as well as I do, you being in Dallas, me being in Minnesota, and I'm sure anybody that's watching this, in their city, they know they can take a rock throw in any direction, pretty much hit a fitness center. And you have all these small little franchises, these large franchises, and these boutique gyms around. All the brands kind of speak to a general. If I use like an Orange Theory, Title Boxing, Farrell's Boot Camps, right? Come in, jump around, sweat, and you're magically going to become healthy. Well, anybody that's tried those knows they're not really the best way of success. So when we opened our business, one of the things was, hey, we help people that are 30 to 40 years old that maybe haven't worked out in 10, 15 years, or maybe never at all. And you get to get away from the other type of gyms where there's 18 to 24-year-old kids running around, men and women that are topless and sweaty. It's more a pickup joint and bar atmosphere than actually a place where you feel comfortable to come work out and get your results. And also providing that personal one-on-one, like, hey, this is a personal one-on-one. Scott, you're a client. Your time is 11 a.m. until noon. The place is yours by yourself at that time. You don't have to worry about other crowds coming in. You're working with us one-on-one. So that's a very specific, which was able to separate from the other people out there. And that's the important thing about the market research too, to where if I did that in a town that was demographics of 28 and younger, because it was a college town, am I really going to fill the place up and be able to be successful? Possibly, maybe with some of the teachers, professors, some of the older people, but in reality, you're limiting yourself. So it's very important to do that stuff.
So the great thing about the guide that we have in our Facebook group is that it will actually show people how to do the market research, the actual nuts and bolts of go through this. This is the process. This is how you determine. It's almost step by step. So I really encourage people to dive into that and just get a basic understanding of the framework of what market research really means, and hopefully that will be a great help to people. And if you have any more questions, of course, in the group, feel free to reach out to us.